Hi guys, this week it's a bit different. I'm not going to be doing a painting tutorial. Instead, I want to talk to you about my favourite paintbrush. Now, it's nothing fancy. We probably all have one. It's one of the beginning techniques that you learn when it comes to highlighting and stuff. And that paintbrush is the humble Drybrush. Now this thing is really quite versatile, and it's a brilliant starting point for highlighting, or if you're doing a full army at once like I am at the moment with my orcs. I've just done a test unit, so testing the colour scheme to see if it works and see how I can get it to run efficiently so that I'm not spending years painting this army. I can get it done relatively quick. And I use the dry brush for highlighting the skin, and it works surprisingly well. I use basically the same colours without the in-between steps that I use in my orc painting tutorial, which I'll put a little card up here for you if you want to watch that. So yeah, I've been using it quite a lot on the orcs, and I'll be doing a video soon on how I speed paint them. I'll film myself painting the orc boys because I've got quite a few of those to get through. So yeah. Now I want to talk about the use of the dry brush, and to do that we're going to need some visual aids. So I'm going to show you a squad of Seraphon warriors that I painted this week, primarily using the dry brush. So when starting this unit, I knew that I wanted to have a sort of mint green main skin tone, and the shield was going to be purple because green and purple complement each other really, really well. Surprisingly though, I'm actually going to use a red base coat. I'm going to be using Blood Angels Red, the contrast paint by Citadel. I'm doing this because green and red are complementary colours, so the shadows will be a bit more visually interesting than just a darker green, whilst actually working really well with the green as well. It wouldn't work quite as well if I used bright orange in the shadows as it would with using this dark red, as it's already a complementary colour. It's if you're getting into your colour theory and all that, it's meant to work. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to paint all of the areas that I want to be green in this red base coat. And the good thing about doing a whole squad is by the time that I've finished painting the last one, the first one's probably already dry, which means I can go on to using the dry brush to highlight the skin. Now how you go about using a dry brush is you dab your brush in the paint, get a nice amount on there, and then I tend to wick off as much as I can into the pot because you don't want to waste too much. So you're trying to remove as much paint as possible. And then you will rub it onto a paper towel, again trying to remove as much as possible, until you get to this sort of consistency where it's barely showing up on the paper. So now pick up your model, pick a direction to come from, and start sweeping your brush down the miniature across the area that you want to highlight. As you can see, the paint catches on all the raised areas. So that's what makes Seraphon so good for this task. They're so highly textured that the paint is going to be catching on a lot of things. So most of my Seraphon that I've done so far have all been with a dry brush. So I do one coat of this on each miniature, and then I go up with a brighter green and do that again, making sure this time to only do the top areas to create that illusion of light coming from the top. After that we move on to his purple shield, which I base coated with Venetian purple, and then I'm going to use Gene Stealer purple as the highlight colour. Once again you're getting a bit on your brush, wiping it all off, and then going down the shield. Just like with the skin, I'm going to use a slightly lighter purple. In this case I don't actually own one, so I've mixed some white into Gene Stealer purple. So this is one example of how you can use it. I think that these Seraphon warriors turned out pretty good. It's a nice, easy and quick way to highlight your miniatures and get them on the table. However, that's not the only use it has. For example, I almost always use a dry brush on the bases for my miniatures, mainly because I put a lot of texture onto the bases that I want to stand out. Therefore, you're going to be trying to catch all of those tippy top bits to really highlight the texture. So I recently painted this orc knob like I mentioned earlier, but as it's one of my old miniatures, it's on a slightly smaller base than what's being supplied with the current orc line. So as I had a few slightly larger bases spare, I decided I would take him off his old base and prepare a new one for him. To get this texture, what I've done is PVA glued some sand in patches onto the base, and then I've gone over it with Aguilan Earth, which is a crackle paint, and let it dry. Using these two things together helps there be quite a range of textures on the base, rather than it just being crackly or just being sandy. Once it's dried, I'm going to use some brown wash all over the base to get into the recesses and stuff to really deepen the dark areas. And then we move on to the dry brushing, once the base is dried of course, because washes take like half an hour to dry. If you want to achieve what I'm doing here, but you don't have Agwal and Earth, or you don't want to use a crackle paint, you just want to have the same colour. Agwal and Earth is the same colour as Steel Leech and Drab. So sometimes I do that. If I don't want to have crackle paint on it, I will do a sand base and then paint over it with Steel Leech and Drab. Wash it and then move on to the next steps, which are using Ushabti Bone as your first dry brush highlight. Go all over the base from basically every direction. And then you want to follow it up with Screaming Skull, which is a lighter version of Ushabti Bone essentially. And focus that on the edges of the base a bit more because your character will be stood in the middle, therefore it should be a bit more shadowed underneath him, but lighter around the edge. Now as you can see, those textures have really come to life due to the dry brushing. Now they're the two examples that I've prepared as applications for the dry brush. But before I go, I just want to give you one more bit of advice. Now this here isn't actually it's not actually a dry brush. It's not something that I've got from my Games Workshop or Army Painter. It's not a specific miniature painting brush that is for dry brushing. Instead, it's actually a makeup brush. You can get these really cheap in big sets and they come in varying sizes. So I've got this one slightly bigger, and then 3 at varying sizes smaller than this. And it's great, it's cheap, and they stand up to quite a lot of damage because they're meant to be bashed about your face, obviously by design. So they really are quite good for this, and they're nice and soft. I prefer a softer dry brush, personally. I know people do like quite hard bristled ones, but I prefer a softer one for what I use. So there we have it, quite a short video this week, but it's one that I've been wanting to make for a while because it's my favourite paintbrush and I wanted to share that wisdom. When you're not going like 100%, this needs to be the best miniature ever, and you just want to relax and get loads of miniatures done at once, or just painting for an army or something, you don't want it to be display quality. Dry brush, very helpful. And there's more you can do with it as well, like stippling for battle damage and stuff. Yeah, this video could be a lot longer, but as always, don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you want to see more like it. Maybe leave a comment down below on what you'd like to see in the future. And if you want to help support the channel like the patrons have already got, then come over and join my Patreon campaign, where you can pay £2 a month to join the crew that's already over there, and you'll get early access to YouTube videos, behind the scenes access. You'll be able to heavily influence what I actually create on this channel, and you will be helping me pay bills and stuff, which is lovely. So that's all this week. Thank you for watching, and I will see you later.